Good evening, one and all. One final event night for the 2025 BUSR Spring Split live from the virtual Las Vegas. Now, hope you're ready for the excitement of one final stream night, so I'd made a quick checklist for you. T-Dub and Dragon on comms, check, here we are. One big sphere, oh, absolutely, you can't go without it. The Eiffel Tower, don't know why it's there, but yep. And of course, one big battle royale for the final two spots in the Drivers' Championship podium. Of course, Cameron's already settled it. He did it in the last few weeks, but this time, Joe, Mad Dog, Josh, Dasher, Last Gen U, Geek, they're all fighting for those last two spots. And that's only like half of the people on that list.
Unbelievable. Unbelievable the way that things have progressed. Could be a little bit of an end of an era as well for the BUSR, the end of the 24 game cycle, but of course we've been on 23 for the past 12 months, 25 around the corner very shortly, and if all goes well, we should be moving over to that game. But that's in the future, and of course we need to focus on the present, because Las Vegas has got an interesting history in the BUSR. Many people who are watching might remember the infamous Cameron Searle incident, took pole by a million miles and then stacked it in the wall coming out of turn number 4 on lap number 1. If he does that today, that's going to make for a much more increasingly interesting battle for that runners-up spot.
Absolutely. I mean, Cameron's taken pretty much every single race this season. The only time he hasn't was when the wall beckoned him at Baku. So way back then, he didn't win. It was actually Josh who came away with the victory, which I'm sure T-Double, he's been talking trash in the beforehand that you haven't been believing in Josh. Now, Josh has an opportunity tonight to change that. Of course, he did it in Baku. Can he do it in Vegas, another street circuit? It's been a full calendar full of street circuits, actually, this season. I mean, we've had Canada, Baku, of course, Singapore last week, and of course, we're here in Las Vegas. That's half of the races this season have been around street circuits. But surprisingly, Cameron hasn't gone into the wall as much as I think we thought during this season. But why not? Let's take a look at that championship fight in itself. We've been talking about it. We've been hyping it up, both of us. But there you go, already in gold. Cameron Searle, 310 points. A ridiculous margin over everyone else. We've got Joe and Mad Dog currently the ones taking up the positions on the podium at 188 and 160. Joe, with a good race today, including the sprint race, he settles his spot in second possibly, or at least settles himself on the podium completely.
Yeah, all to play for around a street circuit. We call it a street circuit, and of course it is, but it's part of this modern breed of slightly different street circuits. You know, we traditionally think of the likes of Monaco, perhaps, or Singapore, quite narrow, quite difficult to overtake, but now we've got the likes of Baku, Azerbaijan, where we've already been, Las Vegas, another one of them. Saudi could potentially throw into that as well. A little bit wider, a little bit more space for wheel-to-wheel action, traditionally at least, does produce much better racing. Also, does catch a few people out still, though.
Absolutely. And we do have the battle underneath. We've got Josh 159 just behind, Dasher and Last Gen U sitting on 140 each, Geek on 123, and Ben, unfortunately, I think he is in today. I need to double check. Yeah, we do have Ben, so he has an opportunity to get up the standings a little bit more. He's not been available the last few weeks. Unfortunately, but I think I remember the last time I talked to him when he did make it onto a podium a few weeks back. It would have been a while ago, possibly around Austria or a little bit earlier than that. But he was quite confident about Las Vegas, quite quietly confident about this rest of the season at the time. Unfortunately, I think availability just tripped him up, but he's still in that fight for those top few spots, especially with a sprint race up on the docket, I should say. And that will be 9 laps. And of course, our feature race, 25 laps, but we'll be on qualifying very, very soon.
Yeah, and Ben Mills looking to maybe put some manners on a couple of the more experienced faces here at the BUSR. The likes of Geek, the likes of Mad Dog and Dash that are just a couple of places and a few points above him in the standings. And there is an opportunity with a couple of races, more points on offer, to make that little bit of an incline or make that little bit of a movement towards those higher spaces. Try and fill them, do the best way possible. And then we talk about momentum a lot. If you can finish this game cycle strongly, finish this academic almost cycle strongly, puts you in a very nice position confidence wise to go into the brand new season in a few months' time.
Let's be honest. I think confidence only gets you so far if the handling model is just sort of gets messed up a little bit by EA fiddling around with it. So we'll have to see how things come out with F125. But not to throw too much shade at the game before it's even come out, before anyone's even had a chance to play it. So I think it is just going to be all about seeing how you finish off this game cycle and this season with F1 23 in your hands. You know how this game plays. You know what you can do on it. 17 drivers driving today. And we have the first drivers getting out on track to start putting laps in.
18-minute qualifying session. If you are new, first of all, welcome in. Hopefully you enjoy the action under the lights of the Sin City this evening, as we have the two Papaya McLarens exiting pit road almost at exactly the same time. Bit of a waiting having to go on. 18-minute qualifying session. Like I said, got to be careful with the soft compound tyres. You're going to want to treat those like gold dust at times. Should be seeing 3 runs, 2 new sets of tyres left. Most drivers will want to save 1 brand spanking new set for the race that will be coming up later on this evening. Most drivers piling it onto the circuit. Still a few seeing refuge in the garage. And it is an AlphaTauri. Been a long time since I've said those words, of Woolly Blobs, who is going to lead everybody out and will be the benchmark for them to chase.
Well, there's Josh. He's going to be having something to prove tonight to you. So we'll see how he does, as he will be, of course, the first one setting a lap time out on a track that hasn't quite been rubbered in. So we're going to see what times can be set to start things off. And of course, we've got Cameron starting off with the Inters. He's been doing this in the entire season. I've been trying to tell him that it's not Creator Series. There's no Inters poll. But he still hasn't listened. But it doesn't matter. He has got a few pole positions to his name, but I think not quite as many he would want throughout the season. But let's be honest, in the end, it hasn't really mattered. 310 points on top of the standings. No one else really challenging him throughout the season. There's been some good individual performances from other drivers on the grid. But oh my God. Just seen for a moment someone spinning on track. Was that lag?
That was Matty. I think that was Matty in the Haas, who's also on the intermediate tyres, those green stripe tyres, potentially struggling a little bit for tyre temperature overheating already, slightly too late on the brakes, and having a bit of a Code Brown moment straight away in our qualifying session. Wooly round the final corner, Josh Wooly to cut the beam to start his first flying lap of the session. Should we have a run through, going through turn number 1 now? Actually a really nice corner. When you get it hooked up, you can really feel the grip and the confidence you have in the car, and then swinging it through turn number 2. Got to be careful, turn 3 and 4 I should say. Be careful of that wall on the outside. AlphaTauri car parts usually stranded there, especially on the opening lap of a Grand Prix. Nice little straight, potential for opportunities to overtake in the race, and heavy braking zone down into 3rd gear into season 4 of turn number 5. And then, I don't know if you agree with me, but this section, I know we've got the lovely little smiley face that we are going to see just there on the left hand side. One of the worst sequences of corners in F1. Gonna put it out there.
I think it is horrible when you've just started playing it. Of course, you wouldn't know, but every single week I've tried to play the track and sort of get to know it, get used to it. That wasn't a section that I had a lot of problems with. I think it's the exit curb that got me quite a few times, as Josh does have a slight wiggle on the circuit on the exit, but it's not too bad. It's actually quite nice when you get it right. You sort of do feel actually, I've hooked that up nicely, but this, it's not great. It's way too slow on an F1, so I was trying to recover it and try and make sure that I said it was all right, but no, I think in the end I had to rationalise it as a not great corner, as Josh will be moving towards the finish line. Will cut the beam, 131.6 to start off proceedings, and that'll be top of the timing sheets to start things off.
Yeah, the benchmark for everybody to chase. Unfortunately, we can't quite see just yet. The Delta's not showing us what times everybody else has got, but it is last gen. You into second. Mad Dog make that 4th now. Willie comfortably clear, nearly half a second clear of now Ben jumping up into second ahead of the 2 Papaya McLaren cars, half a second and 3/4 of a second back respectively. The second AlphaTauri is the slowest so far. It must have been a little bit of a mistake on that lap, because you'd be quite concerned, wouldn't you, if you were 5.2 seconds off the pace. SK also struggling a little bit there, 4.2 seconds down in the silver arrows of the Mercedes cars. Top 8 representative times currently separated by just under 2.2 seconds. Still waiting for Some of the other bigger names to set their times, obviously Cameron Searle and Matty, who has actually returned to the pits, getting off those intermediate tyres ASAP, but Cameron starting his lap on intermediates. Like you said, no point for fastest lap on the intermediate tyres in the first 6 minutes of qualifying, but I think there'll be a few bragging rights if he does manage to set a faster lap than somebody on the soft compound tyres, and maybe a little bit of egg on the face of the person that could get eclipsed by our champion.
I think if anyone else had run an Inter's time and beat you on the soft tyres, you would be thinking, oh goodness, that's ridiculous. But with Cameron, I don't think you would be feeling that. I think this is just a standard day for him, standard qualifying to start off with the Inters and set a very good time. And quite honestly, I think the guys on 135s, 136 to start off with, you're doing perfectly fine. That's what I was doing in time trial, so you're all right. To defend both the times. Yep, you're good. You're golden. Go again. As we are continuing to watch Cameron, who will be setting his first time on the Inters, as we've been saying, as he's rounding down onto the strip. I'm going to change the camera angles down to him. Yeah, there we go. Straight down the Las Vegas strip. Huge straight. I don't think I'd be lying and saying possibly one of the longest straights in the F1 calendar.
Oh, that's a very good question. It must be. I know the China straight going down into turn 14 in the final sector
very good shout.
Is very, very long as well. That might be the longest. I think it's definitely over a kilometre. Cameron Searle definitely not going to go fastest here. What is it going to be, though? Who's he going to be ahead of? Just Alpha. SKLB counting his lucky stars, 4.3 seconds off the pace, and Alpha making a mistake as well. So nobody has the embarrassment of being beaten by the driver on those intermediates. And Wooly, Josh has made a little bit of a mistake there, potentially going for a second flying lap. Definitely isn't on an out lap, and I can see that there is a little bit of a left front end plate missing. And AlphaTauri, as we've said a number of times, are quite used to seeing cars pitched into the barrier in the exit of 4.
I think I see Cameron in the background allowing a few people through. He's looking at the wall. Don't catch me out now. Going too slow for you to catch me. As we are continuing to watch people. Finn has retired from the session, so it seems like a wall has claimed a victim throughout the start of qualifying. Here is Cameron actually on my screen has spun around. I do have the camera on him, and he has spun. And actually, that's not a great position to be in. He's facing the wrong way, and is this going to be a disqualification possibly in qualifying? Does that happen?
Yeah, it shouldn't be, though, because was just making sure that he kept himself moving. Avoiding, very wise, it has to be said, the Alfa Romeo of Chaotic coming through. Last Gen U has set a second time in the session, managed to move to within 0.4 of a second of Josh's lap, and the other McLaren finding an improvement as well. Second and fourth, for the two Papaya cars. Ender Epic with a decent lap time to go into the top 4 and ahead, crucially, of Joe in the green machine of the Aston Martin. Geek still a little bit off the pace, down in 8th. Captain B with Chaotic finds an improvement. Ben has also dropped it. I believe a lot of yellow flags out there. There's a bit of a kerfuffle going on coming out of turn 4. And bits of carbon fibre scattered absolutely everywhere. There's a couple of Williams cars going slowly. Charlotte may be involved in it as well on her outlap. But Ben, who was looking pretty competitive, only 4.5 tenths off the benchmark pace. Yes, Charlotte is missing a front wing. SK's binned it coming into turn 5 as well. You can see on the mini-map the teal of the Mercedes stationary. And we've had an absolute almighty skirmish halfway through qualifying. Not even the race, everybody, and we're still throwing it into barriers.
I think this is going to be half expected around quite a tricky street circuit for a lot of these drivers. As I think Cameron almost went into the pit wall as he entered to try and put some soft tyres on. Don't think we've actually seen a proper time being put in for a while, as Chaotic trying to make their way around without issue, as Last Gen U will be entering the pit lane, currently sitting in P2. Geek rounding through that small section, cut that exit curb quite a lot out into the final straight. What time is current P8 sitter going to set as Geek rounds the final corner to the start-finish straight, takes 0.4 off, and is up to P6. And finally, we watch another good time be put in around the Las Vegas street circuit.
But still nearly 0.75 of a second down on Woolly's time that he set right at the start of the session. So clearly quite a serious lap set by the AlphaTauri. We're usually seeing a Red Bull at the top of the tree of Cameron Searle, but still waiting for that run on the soft compound tyres, maybe waiting until right at the end of the session, going for one flying lap, as Sebastian Vettel did, remember, back in 2013 at Singapore. Here comes the Aston Martin of Joe. What can he do? Moves from 5th up to 3rd, 4/10 shy of Woolly's time. Decent lap as it's James, also with an improvement up into 9th place. The two Scarlet Ferraris, 7th and 9th, with Mad Dog, the Alfa Romeo, sandwiched in between them. Top 9, fairly close, separated by just 1.1 seconds. Then a little bit of a gap, has to be said, back to Jack Hans in 10th. First of the Alpines, 1.8 seconds down, 700ths clear of Charlotte. And then some DNFs scattered throughout the field. Also, Charlotte returning to the pits in that beautiful blue Williams. Still waiting for Cameron Searle and Alpha, and Matty, who in the Haas is on a flying lap. Mad Dog down by 3.5 tenths, diving very late into the pits over the curbs.
Takes away a slight toe going through that final corner, as I think there was someone just hiding behind Dasher on an outlap. Why don't we follow Dasher around? Dasher, who's sort of been sporadically involved, got in the way of the title fight in a way, but still sitting in P5. One of the drivers currently contending for at least P3 in this championship, with Joe currently sitting in P3 in qualifying and P2 in the championship. He might be quite difficult to usurp for that second spot just behind Cameron. Dasher heading through first few corners in the first sector. Current driver in P7 in this qualifying through this very slow section, which we've definitely agreed is one of the worst in F1, as he reaches the exit down to the first short straight out of sector 1, takes off about a 10th of time down towards the snout of the pig around this corner, and will head out onto the Las Vegas strip. The huge straight here, the Kemmel straight, the China long straight. Got quite a few good ones on the calendar with a DRS. Quite exciting action. I'm expecting it down in the sprint race and the feature race later on, as Dasher taking 4/10ths off. Halfway through the circuit is the end of sector 2. So he enters the final sector. What sort of time can be taken off? The exit curb cut off by Dasher, but not invalidating the time as he starts to go towards that final corner, as he'll fling it through this final section, a lot like Singapore. Takes 5/10ths off and goes P2 just behind Josh.
Competitive time, and he'll be happy going into the closing stages of our qualifying session to have that decent banker on the board. And he can really try and attack in his final run of the session. Alpha did temporarily move up into 11th, bumped down into 12th after an improvement for somebody. I think it was Matty, actually. Yes, Matty getting a time on the board for the very first time, but still 8/10ths shy of what Josh Woolley has done. Cameron Searle has entered onto the circuit for the first time on the correct compound of tyre. Yellow flag still out as drivers trying to get out the way of each other. Very difficult to make sure you don't trip over other drivers who are on their in-lap or their out-laps, respectively. Cameron Searle with Jack Hans just getting out of the way there. Matty will be returning to the pits in the Haas car. We are watching Last Gen U on their third run of the session. DRS flap open at the back of the Papaya McLaren car. Can't quite remember what the deltas were. Cutting the beam. Purple middle sector. Don't trust that necessarily. The game likes to tell us it's a purple middle sector quite a lot, but down by just 5 milliseconds into this technical complex of 14, 15 and 16. Rotates the car nicely, doesn't take too much of the curves, and thankfully it doesn't unsettle the car through the final part of 16. And now you are pulling gears all the way up to the line, mashing that right pedal into the floor. And will it be an improvement over the line we go? Finds 400th of a second. No improvement positionally, though. That might be the last time we see Last Gen U with a competitive run in the session. With only 4 minutes to go, going to have to get his skates on to get back down pit road. Can it be 2 improvements for the 2 McLaren cars? Ender Epic 6th place at the moment. Will it be lifting him up? Yes, it does. Now second row exclusively. Papaya 3rd and 4th, 4/10ths shy of Josh Woolley's time.
Big help in terms of the championship to get above Joe, pushing him back another spot as Chaotic making big dash up. 6/10th improvement in P11. But as I was saying, Dasher and Last Gen U will be thanking Ender Epic for pushing Joe a little bit further down in terms of the championship. He is quite far ahead of both overall, 188 versus 140s for both of them. But I think that little advantage going into the sprint race, get yourself a few extra points over Joe, sets yourself up for the feature race where the more points are available, as we are watching the current champion reigning, defending, I can fairly comfortably say undisputed considering the performances this season, currently in P16, but that is definitely not representative of what he can do around this circuit. As he's going through this slow speed section, turns 7, 8, and 9, out towards turn 10. Just a slight right turn. Needs to move out to the middle of the track as he moves past one of the papayas. Out the way, down towards 11 and 12. It's Cameron moving around those corners without consequence. And out onto the Las Vegas Strip, the huge straight up into 8th gear. Get your deploy going. Use the energy to get down towards turns 14, 15, and 16. Almost the last obstacles that you really have to face. We've got a few extra drivers. That's a very close trail from Cameron Searle to get a little bit of an extra time going into the 3rd sector. Gets through this final section and down towards turn 17. The sort of slight Singapore-esque left turn, I should say, as down Cameron goes. 4-second improvements. Wow. That only takes him up to P2.
Well, how are you looking now, Josh Woolley? That could be as he finds an even bigger improvement. 31.5. Have a bit of that champion, Cameron Searle. 4/10 shy of what his former teammate has managed. I think Josh Woolley now saying, you know what, I'm going to park it here. That is me done for the session. Go and chase that, everybody, as Mad Dog in the pits has also retired. Woolley does retire on circuit. So that is it for the provisional pole sitter. With 90 seconds of the session remaining, it is down to somebody to chase that time, the runaway time from Josh Woolley. Cameron Searle leaving a little bit to be desired, it has to be said. 4/10, not an insurmountable margin, but not insignificant either.
Still time left out on the track, 1 minute 13. So this is definitely going to be the last few times being set by the drivers out on track. As I think Cameron must be going for yet another fast lap to try and usurp the current pole sitter. So he does have a little bit of traffic in front of him. I think he'll need to try and negotiate his way past going to Sector 2. Darts out the way of the Ferrari to try and get a little bit of extra speed. He might be just going to decide, I'll dart into the pits. This is as close to pole as I'm going to get. Or he might just go straight to the line. This is going to be the last attempts for a lot of these drivers. It's actually his lost time. He's going to be starting a fast lap then. Here, Cameron's had his cooldown. He's back up to 100 as he passed through the last few sections. Well, there's going to be quite a few drivers trying to get rid of Josh from provisional pole, get themselves up there themselves. Cameron has not had many pole positions this season. He has managed to get to the front maybe once or twice overall, but in terms of pole positions, it's actually been Joe, I think, leading the way throughout the season, with a few Josh pole positions here and there. This time, it could be Cameron with this one final lap. Chaotic has retired from the session. I think we're seeing quite a few retirements of these last few laps to come through. Geek moving into the pit lane. That's his qualifying done. It's James, the other Ferrari, opposite Dasher in the garage. Be trying to set one last time as well, crossing the line. 132.5 gets him up to P10. But Cameron watching him, he's taken 2/10 off so far. Alpha taking 7/10. He's in P12. That'll be end of qualifying for him. Matty will be setting a time here. Got one final corner to go to get through, and it will be a 132.3. A little bit of an improvement for Matty. Up into P8, just behind Ben, who retired earlier in the session. Joe, one of the pole sitters from the past few races, up to P2. Gets past Cameron. And there'll be one last person out on track that I can see who might take that pole position off Josh. Ooh. And that's going to be this man right here, taking 3/10 off the time currently. Down to the last straight. It is only going to be turn 17 to go for Cameron Searle. What is going to be the time on the wall? 131.5. It's not enough to get P1, but it is enough to get the front row at the moment.
Threw it away, has to be said, into that final complex of 14, 15 and 16. Was slightly wide of the apex of 14 the first part. Compromised his run through the rest of it and would have been losing time all the way down until he cut the beam through the final corner of 17. Only 0.04 of a second in it, and that was probably where the time was. So it is AlphaTauri and Red Bull on the front row, and it is Josh Woolley taking pole position ahead of the champion. Good late laps coming in from the chasing pack, but none of them managing to dislodge the AlphaTauri right at the summit. And that sets us up with a very intense, a very close qualifying session for what should be a very exciting sprint and main race.
Absolutely. And in terms of championship conditions, Josh in P4 at the moment. He's in pole position for the sprint race. He'll get a little bit of an advantage over Mad Dog, who's currently the closest competitor to him on 160. Joe just behind in P3 on the second row will also be fighting Dasher. So we got that top set of drivers who are definitely within that fight of the P2 and P3 in the Drivers' Championship. The last two drivers who'll get trophies along with Cameron. But we'll have to see how the sprint race turns out. I mean, there's so much that could go wrong for these drivers around Las Vegas. We've definitely seen it in the past happen. Let's not bring it up in hopes that Cameron doesn't figure out what that turn 4 wall is once again. But with the sprint race and the full race coming up, I can see a lot of chaos coming. Viva Crash Vegas is what I say. Viva Crash Vegas.
We love it. We love it, don't we? And it's that added bit of spice as well, that everybody in that same region in the championship, in the same vicinity on the grid. We didn't see too much from Ben either, courtesy of that little whoopsie earlier on in the session. We're going down to 3 wheels rather than 4, which it must be said is not advisable. Usually what we see is Cameron Searle, not necessarily qualifying right at the front, but in the right places, then works his way through very quickly and then just soldiers off into a different postcode, different stratosphere in the race, and is incredibly comfortable. Will we see the same here? DRS is going to be very important. Long DRS straight, if you can keep yourself within the 1 second window of the driver in front, you are going to get a lovely little bit of a slipstream and a little bit of a tow potentially away from that battling group behind.
That is going to be the main overtaking zone. It's going to be those DRS straights that these drivers have. I mean, there are some nice fast-paced corners and nice slow-speed corners, but this is a street circuit. Those slow-speed corners, you think, this is a perfect moment to catch up and overtake. No, it's not wide enough. The big complex between about turn 6 to turn 9, that's a great opportunity in some racetracks to sort of slow down, get the dive bomb, get through. Not around here. Not around Las Vegas. That corner is so low speed. Maybe a dart round the outside if you're very careful, but honestly, this track through quite a few sections is way too thin to make those jumps. It is going to be about the straights. It's going to be about exits throughout those corners to try and make an effective challenge on someone's position in this race. In terms of the start, Cameron last week in Singapore had a little bit of a messy one that Joe managed to jump past and start off the race by passing him, and last gen Newt was on Cameron's tail towards the start of the race. Could we see the same thing again here? I mean, Joe is just behind Cameron. A good leap at the start. Cameron might be in trouble if he doesn't have a good start to this race and falls behind around the circuit that, despite having the advantage of the DRS straights, it's a very tricky overtaking track in other points of the circuit.
It's difficult, but at the same time, if there is one circuit that you can get a bad start on and get away with it, this and perhaps Spa as well. Very short run down into turn number 1. Not a massively heavy braking zone either, sort of a medium speed corner. We should see overtaking there, of course, because we've got that long run from 16 down into turn number 1. But yeah, if you can just keep your head, even if you do get a little bit of wheel spin off the line, try and hold it up the inside, around the outside of 1, 2, 3 and 4. Set yourself up nicely for that middle sector of 5 up until turn 12, which is a very difficult corner. It has to be said. That sausage curb on the inside can spit you into the arm coat on the right-hand side. And if people are trying to go too wide, could come a cropper. No formation lap. And we're getting ready to go. 5 lights. We are racing for the sprint here in Las Vegas. AlphaTauri versus Red Bull on the front row. Joe potentially sniffing an opportunity around the outside, but it's Cameron Searle darting to the left, trying to get the lead away from Woolly Blobs straight away. And he's been incredibly successful in doing so. Joe and Jasser dueling behind them with Last Gen U and Ender Epic, the two Papaya McLarens following in suit. Terrible start for Rich James, detached at the back of the pack. Not good news for Ferrari. Similarly for Mercedes, 16th and 17th, make that 14th now for SK up the inside. Very late on the brakes, Last Gen U, last of the late breakers, and that's going to allow his teammate and potentially Ben to get through as well. And Geek will be trying to size up an opportunity also potentially into the middle sector.
Ben has made the move in the middle of the corners, getting up to P6 past Last Gen Newt. Two English sides, English F1 teams making the move and having battled together. But we are seeing a little bit of a train starting to form, of course. This Las Vegas track going to be one of those. There's, I think, a slight tank slapper from Cameron exiting that corner as we start. On the first run down the Las Vegas Strip for these drivers, Cameron already pulling out about 4/10 leads. Dasher about a second separating him between himself and Joe, most likely because of the fight he's having with Ben at the moment, as we can see drop down in the pack. But not quite a move available for Josh just yet, as Dasher does maintain the spot for now against other drivers up and down the grid. People have started to settle in for this shorter run on the sprint race.
Yeah, on to lap 2. Nose to tail, the leading trio. Woolly Blobs jinking this way and that, trying to find any opportunity to force that AlphaTauri back down the inside of the sister team and nabbed the lead back after he, of course, took pole position. Papaya Civil War going on further back, battling over 6th and 7th, losing themselves a little bit of time in the process. Also, as into the pits comes Finn in the Mercedes, picking up a 5-second penalty to boot as well. And it's James, a little bit of damage on the opening turn for those two drivers who will be exclusively battling over the wooden spoon. The McLaren still dueling very, very hard over 6th and 7th, holding up the likes of Geek, Mad Dog and Matty in the process. Also, they're not going to be particularly happy to see what is going on in front of them. They have to sit behind in this long and painful middle sector where, like you brilliantly said earlier, very difficult to go side by side just because of the configuration of the track. Still equidistant, the leading group of 5, half a second between first and second, 4/10 between second and third, similarly from third to fourth and fourth to fifth. Ben has done a decent job to try and rectify the wrongs of qualifying after that mistake very early on, left him with minus a couple of wheels on his wagon. Just about keeping in the DRS range is Last Gen Newt, so when we come on to the next lap, they should manage to reform the DRS train that had been a little bit detached, although dropping outside a second now. That's going to be crucial for the complexion of his race. Which way are we going to go, though? Woolly Bob sitting right underneath the rear wing of his counterpart, and into the lead we go. The pole sitter has first place back at the end of lap number 2. Cameron Searle happy to slot in behind with the Aston Martin, Ferrari and Williams following in suit behind. Oh, tapping the barrier there was Dasher. Sorry, just to jump very late in, but I wonder if he picked up a little bit of damage. Maybe just a lazy exit out of 16. Going to compromise all the way down into turn number 1. No damage, but Ben flying through, potentially retaliating up the inside. Ben was very late on the brake, thought he was going to clatter into the rear of Joe, and now he's disappeared completely, so he must have been caught out by being very late on the brakes and tumbling all the way through the field.
Going to be seeing their teammate fly past. Charlotte through into P12. It must have been just sort of making evasive action to try and get out of the way and trying not to ruin the race for, I think it was Joe he could have piled into the back of after making that overtake, as Charlotte will defend from 2 drivers now, and Ben is allowed through and will be on the inside. Can he make the move work? He's forced onto the outside. A big squeeze coming in from Charlotte as he'll try and dart around the outside again. Past Charlotte, no, has to take evasive action over the corner, gets a 3-second time penalty, and will most likely have to concede the position off that, as Cameron, in the midst of that battle, has overtaken Josh again and is back up at P1.
Yeah, and pulling a little bit of distance as well between himself and the AlphaTauri behind, nearly 0.8 of a second. And Woolly could be a little bit vulnerable here down the strip straight, 0.6 of a second, as Cameron doesn't have the advantage of getting any DRS like the 2 cars behind. And Joe could go from third to the lead by the time we get down to the braking zone of 14. Pulled out to the left-hand side, but it's Woolly that takes the lead back. Joe follows in suit, and Cameron Searle, the champion, down into third. And the Green Machine, the Aston Martin, didn't quite have the overspeed on Woolly to mount a serious assault to try and get the lead for the very first time at the end of lap number 3. Dasher just about still in the picture, although was caught short a little bit by that mistake of Ben at the start of lap number 3, just having to work his way back up towards the leading trio with the 2 McLarens, who seem to have settled their differences now, holding firm in 5th and 6th, with Geek very close indeed behind Ender Epic.
two McLaren drivers in a decent position in the championship as Cameron's sizing up to overtake on Joe. No, a little bit too far back on the straight as Joe just trying to have a nudge down the inside. Cameron on the back of Joe, going a little bit wide through the corner of turn number 6. Going a little bit too far deep as now we'll have a McLaren on him going through these set of corners. And my goodness, that was unexpected. Cameron out of nowhere. I think just having a little bit of a moment on the brakes, going a little bit too deep. Had to avoid Joe, went wide, and allowed a few drivers through. That is going to be golden for Josh and Joe and Dasher. We'll have to try and keep their positions here, but let's be honest, this is a DRS games going down onto the strip. We'll have to see what Joe manages to do. As previous lap, it was both of them overtaking the leaders, so it could be seeing the similar sort of thing as Joe does make the overtake, going down towards the final few challenging corners of the circuit. Dasher will follow along, but will not be lining up a move. Joe, going into lap 5, I believe, will be leading this Grand Prix and leading this sprint race.
Oh, Cameron Searle as well. Another mistake. Terrible run coming through 16. Now has a Papaya McLaren filling his rear view mirrors. And so often he's bulletproof, isn't he, in races? What is it about Las Vegas that brings the worst out of him? His teammate, though, on the move and in the groove up the inside into turn number 1. Haven't spoken too much about Geek thus far in the first 50% of this sprint race, but making slow and steady progress. Now getting in between the two McLarens up to 6th position after a slightly disappointing qualifying. And Mad Dog now going to be right on the back of Ender Epic to try and relegate him further down. Just induce a little bit more pain to that second McLaren, who is going to try and retaliate around the outside, but there wasn't quite the space on the left-hand side to push that McLaren up into 6th place again around the outside of turn number 5. Geek, got to be careful he doesn't lose the DRS to the quintet battling in front, who have almost closed up a little bit. We've seen a bit of a concertina effect in this middle sector. Equidistant Cameron Searle still all over the back of the Scarlet Ferrari of Dasher. And I think you can bet your bottom dollar that by the time we get to the braking zone of 14, this top 5 are not going to be in the order that they're in now.
I think that DRS straight is definitely going to be involved in some way, shape or form with the order changing. As Joe is leading the way here and looks like he'll be taking a little bit of an inside line going down towards the DRS wings opening as Cameron already making a move past Dasher, but all of them will have DRS open except for Joe, who will now be suffering a little bit of a drop down and changing position. Won't be overtaken by Cameron, but it will be Josh moving past to get the overtake and get the lead. And now considering the time difference between all of these drivers, I'm expecting this next DRS section to be absolute chaos with all the drivers hoping to make it line up a move as Joe moving out towards the outside. Cameron taking a look towards the inside as we see in the bottom of the picture. Last Gen U trying to make a move on Dasher, but just had to wait a little bit longer and will drop back and stay in P5.
Yeah, maybe just trying to spook the Ferrari a little bit by looming very large in the mirrors. Just having a little look up the inside, but always was going to back out of that one, I believe. Was just a little bit too far back to make any real impression. It was more trying to force the driver in front to make a critical error. Half a second the gap between first and second. Cameron Searle now applying the blowtorch to the Aston Martin, the beautiful British racing green Aston Martin that currently holds second place in this race. Darting this way now in the middle sector. Was thinking maybe about an audacious move up the inside into turn number 9. Thinking better of it. Geek as well, the second Red Bull, has done a very decent job to maintain the gap to the quintet in front. Did go up to, I think it was 1.2 seconds by the end of the strip on the previous lap. Got that down to 7/10 of a second, sorry, and that will be crucial for not only his race, but the chances of the group behind. It is Matty in the Haas that is bringing up the rear of this lead snake of cars. Here we go, though. Lap number 6. I think the order is going to change. Will it be the lead changing hands first? Willie over to the left-hand side, cruising past is the Aston Martin of Joe. Cameron Searle, the champion, following suit from third, might be taking the lead down into turn number 14. Joe could be a little bit defenseless on the outside, and that is Cameron Searle after that mistake a couple of laps ago, rectifying it absolutely beautifully, very efficiently as well, and up into the lead. Yellow flag is out. It's Geek who's piled straight into the barrier through the complex of 14, 15 and 16. Safety car deployed instantly. It won't be out for very long because it's lap 6 of 9. We're about to go on to lap number 7. Wheel removed from the car, and I wonder if that was just a little bit of a mistake over the curbs. Matty with a 5-second penalty for speeding in the pits. That's going to eradicate the advantage he was trying to gain by making a cheeky late stop for a set of soft compound tyres. So that's going to prove crucial. But Geek, one of the seasoned veterans of the BUSR, an uncharacteristic mistake, and he's paid a very hefty price for it.
I mean, after all that joking about Cameron enjoying going into the walls here in Las Vegas, it was the wrong Red Bull that made that fateful move, going into even the wrong corner. Come on, guys, get it. Come on, we're making jokes.
Wasn't in the
here.
script.
That wasn't in the script. Come on, guys, read it. We're in the reading room, not like 5 minutes ago.
Oh dear. Oh dear.
There we go. Safety car going through. This will be the first time that Mercedes has led the F1 teams around the track this season. Of course, Finn and Co throughout the season have been sitting at the back, but they've been steadily improving. I give them credit. I mean, to be honest, the times I've been saying in time trial, the only person I could compete with is Finn. So to be fair, whatever I say does not amount to much, Finn. I swear. As he'll be.
Don't put yourself down like that. Come on, let's have a bit of confidence.
No, I've seen the times, mate. I know the times. I'm cooked, mate. I'm cooked.
Oh dear. What we do know is the safety car will come in at the end of this lap. That is a guarantee. The game always allowed you to have 2 green flag laps at the end of the race. So the likes of Finn, it's James at the back, maybe the Alfa Romeo of Chaotic. They could struggle to catch up. We're now just waiting for the message to confirm what we already know. There it is, race control. Thank you very much for letting us know. Safety car in this lap. 2-lap sprint to the end. Cameron Searle versus Joe versus Dasher versus Josh Woolley, who was the big loser there. Dropped down to 4th place. Safety car deployed instantaneously. Matty as well picking up that 5-second penalty. Could jump him or push him, outside the top 10 come the checkered flag.
Now, Cameron has led these safety car queues quite a lot this season. When is going to be go time for the championship winner? Will it be throughout this last straight down onto the main pit lane through turn 17 as the camera angle set at that point? Joe trailing behind, being as close as possible to the gearbox as it is go time now. Cameron heading down in towards turn 17 and has a good jump on the rest of the cars that will be following behind as Dasher trying to find a way through, and a bit of a moment.
Joe's gone.
Joe is spun, and that's a front wing gone. And a lot of carbon fiber out on track as end plates go flying. That'd be great for Dasher, great for Woolley, challenging for the positions in the championship. It is only the sprint race, so they'll only be gaining a few points on Joe. But he'll drop down to P16, down into last. We will not have DRS open on this lap. So this is a fantastic time for Cameron. There is no chance for anyone to catch him. He's not won a sprint race. I believe the race in Baku went a different direction, but Cameron now can take at least one of the sprint races and could be setting himself up for a fantastic sprint race, as we see quite a few drivers lacking front wings at the moment off that spin from Joe. It might have been a bit of contact. We didn't quite see it on the replay and what we saw in our point of view, so we won't know exactly what happened to Joe going through that corner until we look at possible instance later. But Cameron is smiling, grinning ear to ear. We've been joking about him crashing into walls this entire evening, and he is now leading the sprint race, as we do have another instant. Finn losing the front wing on the wall, and Las Vegas looks like the sprint race is going to be won by the Red Bull.
Well, I reckon 50% of the field are minus their front wings as we come onto the final lap. Fastest lap goes the way of Cameron Searle. Purple lap time, purple faced. I think a lot of the drivers further down the field, sick to the back teeth of what they've seen. Joe, most certainly one of them. It just got way too messy. We have McLarens, Ferraris, Aston Martins, absolutely all over the place. Bit of carbon fibre confetti to boot as well. I have to say, Matty, he's obviously got that 5-second penalty and no front wing at all in the Haas, but doing a very decent job to keep tabs on the duo battling in front. 2.5 seconds a gap between first and second. This race has been absolutely gift wrapped to Cameron Searle after that safety car restart. All he's got to do is open it, of course, but as we've seen in the past with Cameron Searle at Las Vegas, that is never quite a foregone conclusion.
Gotta wait until Christmas before you can open it, Cameron. You gotta wait. Just the last few corners around this circuit. There is one more DRS straight, so I think we just leave Cameron for a moment as another yellow flag has popped up for, I believe, the Mercedes again. But let's leave Cameron to it. He's going to win. He's got a 3-second gap. I'm more interested in this battle going on here. The DRS will be open any second now for these drivers heading into Sector 2 and down into Sector 3 as Oh, no, DRS not open. I've been mistaken. I've been fooled. Being bamboozled, but there's still opportunity with the slipstream for these drivers to change positions as Matty will be up into P3 past Josh. No front wing, no problem. Cameron down past turn 17. I think this is going to be our final positions, bar any final incidents. But Cameron rounding the last corner over the line. Sprint race victory for Cameron Searle.
And Matty cutting the beam in second, but with that 5-second penalty, is going to get bumped down into 6th. No, make that 8th. Look at all of the drivers with no front wing. McLarens and Williams with very limited downforce. Josh Woolley wasn't quite able to challenge Dasher on the run up to the line. So it's Cameron Searle, well, resuming where he normally leaves off. Different day, same Cameron Searle performance. And when it mattered right at the end, managed to keep it cool, keep it calm, and leave all of the trailing drivers in his wake as we wait for Finn, the last driver, to come around the final corner and cross the line. Dasher and Willie Blobbs confirming 2nd and 3rd. Good drive from last gen Newt also to come home in 4th. Yeah, front wings are plenty scattered all over the place, and a good starting point for Cameron Searle to build on. Didn't get the pole position, which he would have been gunning for, but does take the win in the sprint. Driver of the day goes to Charlotte. Not sure about that one. I can't quite remember where she finished, but I think you probably have to give that to Cameron Searle. We're not going to quite see what the final standings were right at the end, but yeah, an ominous sign potentially. And as everybody tripped over each other right at the end, there was one driver that came through serenely, and of course, it was Cameron Searle.
I mean, partway through the season, I referred to him as Ryan Gosling, referring to the Drive movies, and it just happens again. Everything's sort of going on, is sort of going, you guys see that? That was crazy. Anyway, I'm going to keep going. And that's pretty much described that entire Grand Prix for Cameron. He's just sort of just went for it. He drove. He put in the lap times, got the sprint race win. If that geek crash didn't happen, you could see still a lot more chaos to come. I mean, this is what the Las Vegas track does. The overtaking zones are massive, to be fair. The DRS opens, chaos ensues. I said Viva Crash Vegas to start off the sprint race, and let's be honest, by the end of it, I wasn't disappointed. Carbon fiber, plenty of it. A lot for the collectors and the marshals to deal with. But what a sprint race to start off our final event evening for possibly F1 23 action. But in terms of final spring 2025 BUSR split.
Yeah, classic BUSR sprint race, I think, is the best way to put it. Vintage, one might say. And the thing with Cameron Searle as well is that was by no means a perfect performance from him. Made that critical error early on going into turn 5, lost him a couple of places. But he bounces back very strongly. He is maybe one of the best drivers I've ever seen at being able to shrug off a little bit of a mistake. Just goes, okay, we've made an error. I'll just rectify it. I've got the pace. I've got the confidence. I've got the mental capacity to be able to put that behind me. And within 2 laps, he was back up into the lead of the race. Like absolutely nothing had happened.
Talking of shrugging things off, an important person that we should be watching in the feature race is going to be Joe. I mean, big spin after the safety car came in. Dropped him down all the way to last. He did recover a little bit, down up into P12, which I believe if we're running sprint races as I think we are, we should be starting off with the positions that we ended off that sprint race with. So that's an important selection of places that he's made up towards the end of the race if we are starting with that final order. So getting up to P12, it cuts off a few positions that he would have to make up if he started last. So Joe making another recovery drive in Las Vegas, this is going to have to be a massive drive for him to make sure he keeps his P2 standing in the Drivers' Championship.
Yeah, massively up against it. Now, we didn't quite see whether it was contact or whether he just dropped it and then everybody ran into each other in unison and maybe in sympathy as well for the Aston Martin that was facing the wrong way. Yeah, he'll be disappointed, should be starting way high, should have a decent or a much more decent haul of points already put in his back pocket, but going to have to go again. He obviously has the pace. We saw the pace was very, very strong, able to mix it with the big boys for the majority of the sprint race until he came a cropper as the safety car went down pit road. But I think Joe's been around long enough to know I don't need to do anything stupid at this point. The race will come to me. I wouldn't be surprised if he ends up in the top 5 if he doesn't do anything stupid. So I think he just needs to keep calm, carry on, and I think it will come to him with the pace he's got.
We've got 25 laps around the Las Vegas circuit. That's plenty of DRS straights to make the most of. And let's be honest, there's most likely going to be quite a few safety cars that is going to close up this field quite a bit. So Joe just needs to be sensible. He doesn't have to make moves in areas that he doesn't need to. He just needs to wait for DRS straight, make sure he's driving fast enough to get within DRS. And yeah, the race is just going to come to him. For the rest of these drivers, they've got him quite far behind, but they still need to get the job done. I mean, Josh, he's in a half-decent position to make sure he maintains his P3 standings or challenge for it. We got Mad Dog, who's dropped back a little bit, who's currently sitting in P3. And then we got Dasher as well. I mean, every driver that I said earlier who's going to be challenging for the podium for the Drivers' Championship are very close together. But at the same time, you can't just be desperate and chuck it into a wall and try and go as deep as you can into a corner to try and get an overtake done around this circuit, around a street circuit. You have to be sensible. You have to be more relaxed. You have to sort of think, right, the incidents are pretty much likely to happen. I have the opportunity with DRS straight. This is not Monaco where every single turn is just like, well, I sure hope this driver in front of me messes up a little bit so I can get past. No, Las Vegas, it's more open than Monaco, but a little bit more closed, I would say, than maybe a Singapore. As we do start the race, lights out, and away we go for the Las Vegas feature race. Cameron Searle starting things off, finished off with a sprint race win as Last Gen U going around the inside, sweeping through to get up to P3, past Josh. That's great for his championship, as we do have a yellow flag coming out for Sector 1 already. And I think that is Ben and SK having an incident at the start. And I think already we are missing front wings on two of our drivers.
Yeah, into VSC conditions also, so the race is neutralised. And yeah, Ben, who's had an absolute shocker so far, had some decent pace, but unable to keep it A, out of the walls, and B, out of the way of other cars. Seems to be magnetically attracted to them, finds himself once again down into last position. And SK, who had a decent sprint, actually worked his way back from, I think he was 16th on the grid, up into, he was 10th, I think, when the safety car was called out. But coming a cropper once again. Good start for the McLaren boys, up to 3rd and 4th respectively. Not a good getaway for Josh Woolley. Would have been hoping to challenge Cameron Searle and Dasher. Now has two Papaya cars firmly in his way. Was also lucky that he didn't get overtaken by his teammate Alpha as well. If we have a look at the tyres, lovely little split. This is what I want to see. Strategy involved. Leading duo on the hard tyres. The two McLarens on the yellow stripe mediums. Hards for Woolley, so that could also explain why he was a little bit compromised off the grid. Mediums for Alpha, and then soft tyres for Charlotte, making the most of those off the start. Matty on the mediums, softs for James, and Mad Dog mediums for Chaotic. Geek on the softs along with Joe as we are underway once again. No DRS, of course, and a bit of a gap between 2nd and 3rd to contend with. Also, Willie's going to try and launch it up the inside of Ender Epic, get one of those places back ASAP, making up for lost time. He does take 4th place, just about avoiding the barrier and keeping it turned nicely. His teammate not doing that, though. Alpha spinning in sympathy for his teammate. Is the safety car going to be called out? It's a virtual safety car, and almost instantaneously Alpha saw his teammate start driving off into the distance, got in between the two McLarens, went, nah, I'm done, that's it for me. Lost it on the exit, spinning into the wall on the left-hand side of 16. And already, we've had a couple of incidents, and we're down to 16.
I think somehow Ender Epic has handed him a fiver. And just have a nice evening, mate. That's Alpha out the race. The first retirement. Well, I'm surprised it wasn't Ben or SK going out through that first corner instant, as both of them heading into the pit lane. I believe actually SK staying out on track. It will only be Ben getting a new front wing out on circuit as he starts to leave. Still a virtual safety car. That should be ending any second now, as this group still maintaining position with each other. As Cameron, I have to say, just in the middle of the thought, these soft runners are going to be so frustrated with this race start. I mean, you really want to be on your rocket ship when you're on the soft tyres. You just want to be flying up the field. Of course, there we go. The suggested AWS strategy is one stop onto the mediums for these soft runners. But you really want to be making the most of their life. It is going to be short on these soft tyres, and you really just want to be flying through the field. You could see the mentality with Geek and Joe. They're two starting on soft tyres. They definitely want to be flying through this early part of the field. Ben, I think, just being caught out by possible slower drivers that he wasn't quite expecting. Of course, with less experience around a circuit, you're going to be braking a little bit sooner into corners to make sure you can make it through, as we are back into green flag conditions. Already seeing a small overtake going on there. Joe past Geek onto the inside. No incident. Both through fine as Joe up in P11.
Yeah, surprising that one, because those two don't normally see eye to eye in the BUSR. I think that is the best way to put it. Matty also moving up into 6th place, getting ahead of Charlotte on those soft tyres. Big slide for Dasher coming through the exit of turn number 2. That'll put his eyes on Storks a little bit. Matty is dropping down place, his hand over fist. He has dropped it coming out of turn 1. And after getting up into 6th place, as the virtual safety car came in, he's thrown all of that in the nearest bin that he could find. And it's down into 14th in between the two Mercedes cars. Not good news at all as Charlotte Perkins loses one more spot. This time it's the Ferrari of It's James getting past and was up into 6th, down to 7th, back up to 6th, and now back down to 7th once again for the Williams with the two Alfa Romeos in hot pursuit as well. Joe and Geek continuing to stick their teeth into one another, and for the moment at least, it's the Aston Martin holding out in 10th. That overtake that he made going into 14 on the previous lap around the outside, holding on to that position as Geek tried to mount an assault in that middle sector. Very, very congested in this midfield.
I just remembered from last week I predicted Joe to win this because I wanted a new winner apart from Cameron. I might have ruined it. Already
more
oh my
contact!
goodness! Contact! Charlotte and I believe Mad Dog coming together. And almost, I think they both managed to survive. There's going to be a little bit of damage, possibly floor damage for both of the drivers. Joe making their way through past Charlotte on the Las Vegas strip, down towards turns 14, 15. Joe maintaining the lead on the inside. Can he maintain position past Charlotte? Yes, he can. Joe through and climbing positions up to P7. Geek will be just behind on the gearbox of Charlotte. We're hoping to line up a move as well. But that was a big moment between the two drivers, and I'm amazed that everyone has survived through that incident.
Oh, and darting out to the left-hand side. The Alfa Romeos going into battle into turn number 1. Mad Dog trying to get 10th place away from his teammate. One of the Alfa Romeos, not sure who it was, as Mad Dog does sweep around the outside. Little bit of wheel bang between the pair of them. Rear right to front left, but with the grip of the soft tyres, I think Mad Dog is going to take that as Josh Woolley falling behind Ender Epic in that leading group of 5, who've got 3.2 seconds ahead of the Ferrari of It's James. But yeah, Joe, incredibly lucky because he had his nose absolutely swept across by one of the Alphas. Another Code Brown moment for one of our drivers. This time it was the Aston Martin who, in all of this, has managed to come through. Very decent start up into 7th place as Charlotte Perkins defending with all her might, but Geek with superior grip and confidence can just carouse around the outside, and another position lost for the Williams.
Taking a look at the top, Cameron has been usurped. He's down into P3 as Last Gen Newt and Dash are leading the way. And tell you what, Last Gen Newt having a little bit of a lead between himself and the rest of the grid, but he is heading down to the Las Vegas strip. So that is most likely going to be changed with two drivers closing him down past Dasher goes Cameron. Will now be pursuing the Papaya down towards turn 14. Be lining up a move, moving towards the inside. Who will be the last on the brakes? Cameron deciding he's not going to challenge the brakes and just stay on the inside. He'll remain in P2. Good moment for Last Gen Newt there. Good defense. Remains in P1 as Mad Dog and Charlotte are the ones fighting at the moment. Chaotic and Geek as well, having a ding-dong battle as well down the order as Cameron setting the fastest lap of the race to try and catch up to Last Gen Newt. Mad Dog up into P8 will be hopefully deciding that is a set position change and will be getting past Charlotte as they do enter the first few corners of the Las Vegas circuit.
Getting 10th place back as well that he lost going through turn 14 up the inside of Chaotic into turn number 1. He's really been bogged down in this midfield mayhem we've seen with the Alfa Romeo, Charlotte Perkins as well. Joe managing to escape it very nicely, albeit with some slightly soiled pants, I think is the best way to put it. And now holding 6th position after passing James down into 14. Last Gen Newt looking very confident on his medium tyres compared to the hards for everybody else in this lead group, bar his teammate, the two McLarens, going the alternate way on strategy, starting on the mediums, you would imagine going to the hards for the second stint of this race. But Cameron Searle shadowing every move from Last Gen Newt through the sweeps of the middle sector, 9, 10, 11 and through 12, very close to the back of the McLaren, and should all being well, take the lead coming down into turn number 14. Might not even need the braking zone as the rear wing flap is open. Maybe a little bit of ERS usage as well. Flies around the outside. Last Gen Newt slotting in behind into the slipstream, and it is the lead once again for the driver that started this race on pole. Dasher just got to be careful. That gap hovering around 0.8 of a second. Do not want to get dropped and almost form that trio into a bit of a chasing peloton, having to work together to get back within the DRS range of everybody else. Has finally been 5 laps coming. Geek disposes of Charlotte Perkins. I think he'll be absolutely delighted to get ahead of the Williams. The only problem is it's cost him maybe even 10 seconds in this race.
Up front, Cameron setting another fastest lap to try and get away from last gen Newt. This has been basically what he's done throughout this season. Get ahead, get the laps in, make sure you're gapping the driver behind. But in terms of this race, last gen Newt has actually had an extremely good race so far, getting up to P1, being able to hold on to it for a few laps with two drivers who are currently higher in the standings than him, and be able to just sort of get away. He's staying with Cameron at the moment. This has been the most impressive drive from last gen Newt so far, to simply just stick with Cameron, and especially on the track like Las Vegas. We've been talking about the Las Vegas Strip DRS zone, where it's going to be a place where you trade positions. If you can do that throughout the race, you're in with a shout of, well, playing DRS games later on. But if you stick with him, you're in a chance for the win and just snatching it at the last gasp. And it's going to be what this race and how it dictates last gen Newt's strategy of just sticking with Cameron throughout the last 19 or so laps as he moves down to the inside, gets past Cameron. Of course, Cameron will move to the outside as well, get behind last gen Newt, and use the slipstream to maintain his position in P2. It's a light moment for last gen Newt out on the exit. Cameron, will he make a move? Going into turn 17, the last corner, going to the inside. Cameron Searle back into the lead again after DRS zone. But still, last gen Newt is actually with him down into the first corner. No, Cameron Searle maintains position in P1.
Well, the easiest overtake Cameron's ever going to get in his entire life. Last Newt take the lead and they're going, you know what, don't actually fancy this. I think I'll drop back down to second place. Try a reverse entry drift maybe into 14, 15 and 16, and Cameron Searle lapping that up very, very nicely. Is the other McLaren on the move. This has been a couple of laps coming. Up into third place now for Ender Epic, getting ahead of Dash, who's just struggling a little bit for pace and grip on those hard compound tyres. Geek on the move as well, trying to make up for lost time, battling away with his old adversary Mad Dog, and is on this occasion the Red Bull coming up trumps in the Sin City of Las Vegas. Mad Dog down into 9th, both of them on the red stripe soft compound tyre. So we'll be seeing them down pit road very, very shortly, although the safety car would have helped them a little bit in terms of tyre life, being able to extend the stint, maybe be a little bit more flexible in terms of strategy. Now got 2.7 seconds though to try and catch to the duo in front of Joe and it's James, who haven't worked together particularly efficiently because they've managed to lose 7 seconds to this leading quintet.
All the drivers in that leading set, not separated by much, all within each other's DRS, as last gen Newt does get the overtake on Cameron, and I think he'll be hoping a little bit that Ender Epic also joins in on making a move on Cameron. It won't happen on this straight, but possibly the teammates might work together here with two papayas leading the way on the podium. This could be a great time to sort of look at each other and go, hey, we're in a great position. Why? We should be working together here, as Ender Epic he's hoping to line up a move on Cameron and maybe rear gun for him. But let's be honest, when you're trying to overtake the championship winner, it's going to be a very tricky overtake to help your teammate out for the rest of the race. It might just be trading positions, or at least Ender Epic needs to do what last gen Newt was doing. Stay on Cameron's gearbox, put the pressure on him, and hopefully around this Las Vegas Grand Prix circuit, there might be a mistake here and there for Cameron that Ender Epic can make the most of. As we see another Red Bull getting into some action and getting into a fight as he gets past Mad Dog again. Geek and Mad Dog, another duel going on around this circuit. There's been back and forth in terms of positions, but Geek getting past Mad Dog down a DRS straight again. And we maintaining position heading down towards the second DRS straight, as Cameron continues to chase down the leading papaya.
Dasher looks to be really struggling as well, just hovering now over a second behind that leading trio. Touch and go as to whether he gets the DRS, but I think the Scarlet car is just going to be inside the 1 second window and not left red-faced by that one. I think Josh Woolley will be desperate to try and get past. No, the rear wing flap isn't open at the back of the Ferrari. The two McLarens jostling for position with the Red Bull of Cameron Searle, and indeed with each other, as last gen Newt from first down into third, the helping hand of the DRS, pushing Cameron Searle and Ender Epic past the McLaren that was in the lead of the race. And now Cameron will try and use the advantage of the hard compound tyres that are probably the better compound at this stage of the stint, as Mad Dog Geek continue to knock 10 bells out of each other in this race. Lovely little scrap, bit of a slide on the exit of 14 for Mad Dog. That's going to give Geek all the opportunity and invitation he potentially needs to get 8th place back. Well, I was going to say down to turn number 1, but could be through the flat turn 17 to finish what is lap number 8 for these guys. He's in the left, and it's Well, I thought he was going to dart to the inside there and try and get the place. Now he does lunge up the inside into the braking zone, but Mad Dog with the grip around the outside and the confidence to hold it on the right-hand side and keep Geek for the moment at arm's length.
So many drivers threatening that move on the inside as Slight Moment gives an opportunity for Geek going into the next corner. Is on the inside. They'll be side by side, but not for long. Geek should be passed as Mad Dog, you can just see him on the right-hand side of the screen. Drop down in third gear, get through the corner, but Geek is ahead as Ender Epic has been dropped. It is a 1 second gap. It's hovering around that 1 second between himself and Cameron as we head towards the next DRS zone. They are close enough. Here's the moment I've been waiting for. Are these McLaren teammates going to work together here? Because Last Gen New is going to get the DRS flap open. He's going to move past Last Gen New, I think. I think that's the better move. I think Last Gen New has been able to hang with Cameron a little bit more than Ender Epic. So I think Ender Epic, just close the DRS, let your teammate pass, work together from here. When you get in touch, when you get close enough as Ender Epic or Last Gen New trying to make a move on Cameron, both of them coming very close together. I think that's the moment where you pounce, both of them move past Cameron and set up a sort of a 1-2 position between the two drivers. If they do want to work together, I think Last Gen needs to make the pass and lead the way for the Papayas. I think he's been slightly faster than his teammate Ender Epic, but of course, we've still got 15 laps to go. We'll have to see what the pace is like for both drivers.
Agreed. What we do need to think about though as well is the strategy, because those mediums will be past their best on lap number 10 of this race. The hards are the compound that you are going to want to be on, and this will obviously swing in the second stint also. If we don't have a safety car from now until the end of lap number 25, it will be advantage Cameron Searle, Dasher and Josh Woolley on the mediums for the final stint of this race, while the two McLarens will have to make do on the hard tyres, and they'll also be chased down by that trio courtesy of the undercut they'll get from pitting maybe 1, maybe 2 laps earlier. So we'll have to wait and see how that pans out. I agree with you 100% though. Last Gen definitely looks like the quicker of the McLaren drivers, with Ender Epic doing a better job than he did on the previous lap of trying to stay as close as he possibly can to the Red Bull in front. The champion in front of him wasn't willing to play the team game on the previous lap down the straight. Actually tried to get the lead away from Cameron Searle, but was unsuccessful in his attempts of doing so. Car number 7 leading car number 8 down the straight. DRS flaps open, 0.6 of a second between first and second. Cameron Searle probably deploying a little bit of battery because it did increase up to 0.7, but now it starts to come down. Yellow flag as one of the Mercedes has dropped it. There's the safety car being called. Well, and that was just as Last Gen Newt was pulling out, shaping for a move to get past his teammate. SK with a 3-second penalty for corner cutting. This is bad news for, well, everybody really in the top 5. You don't really want to take the mediums 15 laps to the end of the Grand Prix, but that might be what Cameron Searle, Dash and Willie Blobs have to do. And on the other hand, for Last Gen Newt, he's going to get held behind his teammate if he does pit this lap, which surely both McLarens are going to do.
We do have, both of the Papayas entering the pit lane. Cameron as well. So let's see what the choices are going to be made. I think Cameron, of course, yes, he's probably going to go onto the mediums. As we'll see, both of them we'll see the McLarens double stack. I think there's enough of a gap for other teams and other drivers to be able to get in and out safely. Let's see, do we see any position changes? As it looks like Ender Epic has actually found the lead over Cameron. Dasher moves up, Josh moves up, Last Gen Newt will be in P5. So he's dropped down a little bit from where he was residing in P3. Ender Epic on the hards to start off behind the safety car, and he'll be leading the way. So we'll have a new driver finally starting the jump behind a safety car. I don't think we've seen an Ender Epic start, so he might be a little bit of a quite wary with where he starts going, and we might see Cameron possibly make the most of an inexperienced driver leading the way behind that red Mercedes.
Well, this is a huge opportunity for one of the McLarens. They are on the better strategy, let's not forget. It's going to be a mammoth stint to try and get the mediums to the end of the race. They should do so without getting punctures, but remember with the way the tyre wear works on this game, once you pass 25%, there is a significant drop-off, and those medium runners are going to pass that point much quicker than the hard runners, especially because they're going to be pushing very, very hard to try and get a little bit of track position as well. The other drop-off point is 60%. There is a potential, considering they have to do 15 laps, some of them under safety car albeit, but still 15 laps, that they will get up towards that 60% mark and experience the second phase of the tyre drop-off, and that could be where the two McLarens pounce late on in this Grand Prix. They're just going to try and take it deep, stay in the game for as long as possible, not lose out to maybe some of the medium runs behind. The likes of Joe and Geek will be chomping at the bit to try and right the wrongs of the first 11 laps of this Grand Prix. They've been given a free pass, if you will, to get back into this Grand Prix, allowed to pass go. They've just got to make the most of the opportunity that has been afforded to them.
Here's what I'm thinking, right? Last Gen New on the hard tyres needs to make sure he keeps its James behind him. That's job one. Keep the medium runners, keep the hard runners now behind him. I think the other checkpoint that he needs to pass is keeping Joe and Geek behind as well. If he keeps those sort of medium runners behind as well, that is job number 2 done. The next step, of course, the final most important one, stick with Cameron, stick with Dasher, stick with Josh. Keep in line with the rest of the medium runners in front of him. And I think the same goes for Ender Epic. I mean, if you get overtaken in the first few laps by a faster tyre in the mediums, that's fine. But if both McLarens are able to stick with those medium runners, I think maybe lap 20 to 22, 23, we're going to start to see that crossover, if I would make a guess, between the hards and the mediums. That's when it starts playing their hands. I think if Ender Epic manages to keep the lead the first few laps behind the safety car through towards where DRS gets enabled, that is going to be massive for the Papayas if they can get through that. But with the championship leader and 2 drivers who are going to be in contention for the Drivers' Championship podium, that is a tough ask for someone who has not led a safety car queue, I believe, my entire time of casting BUSR from last winter split to now. So it's a tricky position to be in, but you know what? The Papayas this race have been excellent, so I don't see why not Ender Epic can do just that.
Yeah, they've just got to stay calm. You know, they're going to be slower. It's a fact. They're going to be slower in the first, let's say, 5 or 6 laps once the safety car comes in. But if they get to lap 20 and say they're still 4th and 5th, Ender Epic and Last Gen New, they're in prime position for a late race assault at the leading trio, who have to be managing their tyres, managing the battery as well, because they'll be pushing the battery a little bit harder to try and maintain track position later on. They'll find themselves with a golden opportunity to pick up that win. You just got to make sure you don't fumble the bag effectively. Don't go into panic stations if things don't go your way. Brain in a jam jar time, we like to call it sometimes, where if things do start to spiral, you lose your head completely. The safety car in this lap. Will it be the last time we see Bert Mylander? I'm not going to put any money on it, considering what we've seen so far. Ender Epic going to back the pack up. These hard tyres are also going to be colder on the restart, the harder compound. And what strategy does he employ? Does he try and take it all the way to the line? Limit any opportunity for Cameron Searle or Dasher to mount an assault down into turn number 1. He has gone now and has managed to steal much a little bit on the duo behind. And that is an excellent restart, it has to be said, as we start lap number 13, crossing over half distance with the McLaren of Ender Epic leading the way from the champion Cameron Searle, Dasher, Willie Blobs, and Last Gen completing our top 5. As straight on the money, straight on the gas is Joe, making the most of those mediums on the restart, getting ahead of its James, and that is going to be the first alarm bells ringing for the Papaya team.
That is going to be the first driver that I said that they need to keep behind and need to keep in check. Is Joe already making dive down the inside? Can he make the move work going into towards turn number 5? And I think he does manage to get it happen and does make it cleanly. Last Gen New on the hard tyres, we're dropping behind the Aston Martin, but still up front, Ender Epic with the lead will maintain that. But I think with very soon, with the long straight up coming down the strip, we are probably going to see a change in lead unless some incredible defense can be done by Ender Epic, as now we head out through turn 12 towards turns 13, where usually the DRS would start to be opened now, as down through towards now the chase to turn 14. Can Ender Epic stay in front? He maintains position on the inside. Will now have to drop behind Cameron towards turn 14. Ender Epic can't maintain position, but now the next job, try and keep Dasher, Wooly, and Joe behind, as Joe will have the move on Last Gen New. He's managed to confirm that through the rest of this lap. Ender Epic has a job to do now to maintain his position, but it's going to be extremely difficult on the hard tyres. As we said, there is no shame in dropping behind these medium runners as Dasher makes the move. And next up will hopefully, for Josh's sake, be him as well. But he still has a little bit of time to make up before he can make that move possible.
Just need to not get dropped by these faster medium runners at this stage. If he does drop down to 4th position, that's not the end of the world. It will be the end of the world if Dasher falls out of DRS range of Cameron Searle, who's a canny operator, knows what he's doing. He'll be pushing very, very hard as on the mediums. Geek up into 7th place now, getting ahead of James on the hard tyres. Next on the hit list will be Matty in the Haas, who hasn't had a particularly good day, it has to be said, so far. And Ender Epic still staying very close to the back of the Scarlet Ferrari of Dash, who is almost going to drop out of the DRS range and now falls outside 1 second. Cameron Searle trying to bolt, trying to break up the train behind, although losing time as Dash, I think, realising what's going on, deploying some of his ERS to get back within 1 second. And I think we're going to see the train just spread out a little bit more. With Cameron Searle in the lead, he's going to be running at a faster pace than what we saw in the first stint, when we saw a little bit more flip-flopping for position between himself, the two McLarens, Josh Woolley in there as well, along with Dash, who's currently holding 2nd place in this race. Geek 1.1 seconds off the back of last gen Newt in 6th position. Just got to make sure that he doesn't lose too much time as well. Get back within 1 second. That will benefit himself and a couple of drivers behind him in It's James, Matty and Mad Dog. Could be a 10-car DRS train at the start of the restart, or after the first couple of laps of the restart, as Joe, a little bit over-ambitious on the loud pedal, coming through 16. Bit of a chat with the barrier, but no damage done, and can continue soldiering on. Done a very good job to recover, let's say, from what happened in the sprint up into 5th, as It's James relegated down a further position as his Ferrari engine counterpart. Up the inside we go with Matty, and that is 8th place for the former champion. But round, Mad Dog's round, yeah. Just saw it in the background, the Alfa Romeo pointing in the wrong direction. This has been an absolute disaster class, it has to be said, of the Sin City for Mad Dog. Now down into 14th. Clearly put all his money on the red side of his Alfa Romeo car, and the chips have come up black, and it's not exactly working out very nicely for him.
I think, considering the decals of this season, it's either red or carbon fiber. I think those are the two options instead for a lot of these teams. As well, the only one that they didn't really start to go towards carbon fiber was the Red Bull, that is currently leading the way, 4/10 over Dasher, who's managed to maintain that gap very, very nicely. But Josh still unable to make that overtake on Ender Epic as it stands. Joe's managed to get past one. A bump draft! No. That's not allowed in F1 as one goes spinning. The Williams have had a collision, and everyone behind have to go slow. Through goes Mad Dog. Severe collision for Ben. It's not been a great evening for him. And Charlotte will not be having a great time with their teammate as it stands. Just an entire rear end onto the gearbox by Ben, and both the Williams struggling for position down the order.
Well, shows you how broken the penalty system was, that Ben, the car that got spun round by his team, it was the one that picked up the 5-second penalty. Very good job indeed, Codemasters and EA Sports. So I imagine that he'll be able to get that 5-second penalty removed, and Charlotte could be sweating a little bit when she enters the steward's room. Dash has done a decent job to keep tabs on Cameron Searle. 7/10 of a second, that gap is hovering around. Woolly Blobs has got up into 3rd place, pushing Ender Epic down into 4th. McLaren, who did have a little bit of a snap coming through the middle sector on the previous lap, left him vulnerable, and Willie didn't need 2 invitations, only needed 1. Didn't even need 1, to be honest, because that mistake from the McLaren was all the invitation that he needed. And last year, still just there right at the back of the train, but another little mistake there from Ender Epic, going deep into turns 7 and 8, and now he's going to be vulnerable to the Aston Martin of Joe, just overdriving a little bit here.
Just need to relax, need to stay calm. I mean, with what we've seen around the track, what's been going on, there is plenty of time for instance to happen as Jacan's trying to make a move on Mad Dog, going through these south corners. He still remains on the inside, trying to get the overspeed, but no, Mad Dog having the traction, getting the power down, and making sure that he maintains position in P11. It's not been a great race day as Joe finally making a move past Ender Epic on the Las Vegas Strip, as well as hovering behind Dasher is Josh, and Cameron has dropped back down. So it's now Dasher leading the way from Josh, from Cameron, Joe MP4, and the 2 Papayas finally setting in a little bit of a moment on the exit from Ender Epic. Manages to stay out of the wall, and it's just about fine, and will be with his teammate in P5 and 6.
All side by side, cutting the beam though. Josh Wheatley desperate to try and get the lead away from Dasher. Cameron Searle, very willing spectator for the time being in third place, although we know that Joe will be very willing to make an over-ambitious, an optimistic move, let's say, at the inside to try and nab a free spot. Still side by side, sinking their teeth into one another. The Ferrari, the scarlet red Ferrari, are they going to be bleeding and dropping down into second place after taking the lead on the previous lap? Yes, Josh Wheatley up the inside into 5, does get the lead for the first time in this race. Joe was sensing an opportunity to add insult to injury for Cameron Searle and push him down into 4th place, but the Aston Martin didn't quite have the confidence under braking into turn 5 that Josh Wheatley did, having to hold station 4th for the time being ahead of the 2 McLarens who, well, they've lost the places but are still very much in the game here and need to maintain their position for the next couple of laps because the advantage will start to swing back in the direction of Woking. Those hard tyres will come to them, the mediums will start to degrade, and then there is a huge opportunity to maybe get back up onto the podium, maybe even win. We haven't got there yet, of course, so still answers on a postcard.
I think with all these battles going up with this top 4, this is going to be music to the ears of P5 and 6. The Papayas are just going to be waiting for these battles to continue. And on this street circuit, they could get ever more violent. Cameron, getting through, will be equal to Dasher, heading down to turn 14. Who will have the inside? It is going to be Dasher's. Cameron just waits a little bit longer to make the second overtake. Joe on the inside will be fighting Josh through these corners, but will not make the move and is just invited. Ender Epic back in. The 2 Papayas will be chasing down the Aston Martin once more, heading down into turn 17. No one deciding to make a move. I think that's the right move for the Papayas at the moment. Just remain patient, remain calm. Don't get involved in battles too much at this point in time. As we've been constantly saying, the mediums are going to die off. The hards are going to come to you. Just wait for that time to happen. As Cameron making the move past Dasher in the second DRS zone, we're first off the lap. And the Ferrari will drop down as P2, the Red Bull in P1.
What we have to say, though, was that Willie Blobbs and Joe tripping over each other in the final chicane have afforded a potential opportunity for for Cameron Searle and Dasher to try and scamper off into the distance and break the DRS train up. There was 6 cars down into 2. Josh Wheatley pushing hard in this middle sector, though, to keep that gap under a second. Did go out to 1.2 seconds down to turn number 5, but has done an excellent job to recover this one and is very much still in the game. The 2 McLarens in the background. Fastest lap of the race goes to Ben in the Williams, but currently down into 16th, battling away with Jack Hansand. Now it is the Alpine holding 16th and the Wooden Spoon with 7 laps to go here in Las Vegas. The champion, 6/10 clear of Dasher. Equidistant back to Willie Blobbs. Equidistant back to Joe. Equidistant back to Ender Epic, although the McLarens could be swapping places for the first time since the first stint. And you can see they're pulling out to the right-hand side goes Lars Genute around the outside of his team and is going to take 5th place away from him. Joe closing up to the back of Josh Woolley. Dasher doing the same to the Red Bull of Cameron Searle, but opting just to hold station and retain the status quo down into the braking zone of 14. Very happy just to sit in behind for now. It becomes almost a waiting game when we get to this stage of the Grand Prix. Don't want to do anything undue that could throw you into a barrier, but at the same time don't want to find yourself bullied by the drivers around you and shuffled down the field as Joe thought about an opportunity. Had a little look up the inside into turn number 1, but Josh Woolley, wise enough and most experienced enough to know that that was not going to work and could hold station without getting spooked. And actually Joe missing his right front end plate. I wonder if he knocked that off in turn 16.
I think the battle between himself and Josh might have caused the end plate to come off. They were pretty much side by side. They were on the thinnest parts of the circuit. So, of course, that is going to end up with someone getting damaged. Unfortunately for Joe, that is going to be him. So he'll lose a little bit of downforce heading through these corners with a little bit of end plate missing. And I think this is the perfect time for the Papayas. They need to make the move now. A damaged Joe, a limping Joe is going to hold you up. And with this tactic of using the hard tyres, the strategy must be now to get past Joe, get yourselves up into P4 before the predicted time for us, for the medium tyres to start to fall off. As already Dasher starting to fall behind. We have a safety car once again. And I think that's really bad timing for the hard tyre runners, as Mercedes of Finn having a spin and losing the front wing. It's almost rhyming. It's almost made that a little bit of a poem for them. But
he's knocked his wheel off. And that's apologies that we caught that on camera, because that's one of the most embarrassing retirements I think I've seen. Just trying to reverse and knocking that front left tyre off, and not ideal news at all after a little bit of a conversation with the barrier. Cameron Searle all locked up and crossed up down to the pit lane. I wonder if he was very tight on potentially speeding. Everybody diving in for what will be the soft tyres till the end of the race, with 6 laps to go as we've just started lap number 20. Once again, Ender Epic this time is going to be held up behind his teammate. Is that an opportunity maybe for Matty to get in between the two McLarens? I think Joe's also going to fix his front wing damage. Last year, Newton has actually managed to jump ahead of Josh Woolley in the pits. Geek is ahead of Joe. Ender Epic losing out massively, getting held in the pits. Oh, absolute disaster for the second McLaren. Came at absolutely the worst time, dropping down into 9th place behind the Ferrari, behind the Aston Martin, behind the Red Bull and behind the Haas. And now it looks like it's just going to be one Papaya car fighting in that lead group.
It's most likely everyone on the red wall tyres to the end now. It is just going to be about delivering the fastest laps that you can. Only SK, I think, staying out on the hard tyres. 9 laps old, so not too badly damaged. Not too badly degraded. We'll only have 5 laps to the end for him, but I think rest of the drivers behind on the soft tyres, he will have a bit of defending to do. You have to feel for Finn. I don't think that's embarrassing for him. I think that's embarrassing for Mercedes and their front wing suspension. Because my goodness, he just gently taps the wall and it falls apart. Come on, guys.
Paper mache suspension.
Paper mache suspension. It just sort of, you know, the Lego sets, the Lego noise.
Yes. Oh dear.
I can only imagine that as that front tyre hit the wall and all of a sudden it came apart. So, Finn, I feel you, man. I don't think that's your fault. I think that's a Toto Wolff throwing the headset to the floor as he sees the front wing geometry start to fall apart. So, we start to approach what will be release time for these drivers behind the safety car. It is Cameron Searle once again leading the line after, I'll be honest, I think Ender Epic had a brilliant leap at the start of the last safety car. It was exceptional. I think if he had the medium tyres on, along with the rest of the drivers, it would have been a sensational launch to start a restart. But after the safety car, he pulled out about a 6/10 lead from Cameron, whereas Cameron, when he tried to get the jump, was about 4 tenths to him and P2 at the time. So, yeah, it's all in the numbers, and I think Ender Epic had a better launch.
100%. Definitely caught the, especially Cameron Searle and Dasher, a little bit short on that restart. We were probably expecting the fact that he was going so that he was going to take it all the way to the line, and then thinking, haha, I've got this in my back pocket. I'm going to go now and give myself a nice little buffer for the first sector of this lap. But now finding himself down in 9th position, not really down to anything of his own doing. Had to be held for his team, and then by the time he got into his pit box, everybody else had come down pit road, and that the McLaren car was getting held for the likes of Geek, for the likes of James, Matty as well. So it's got some serious racing to do once we do have green flag running. The safety car should be in at the end of this lap, which will give us a 4-lap sprint from now until the checkered flag. And of course, the safety car has completely changed the complexion of this Grand Prix. The guys on the hard tyres were going to really start to come back into play and potentially thinking about making a couple of moves. Joe also had that front wing damage that would have cost him a lot in the corners, but would have made him very slippery and very fast down the straights. I think he would have still been a threat come the end of the Grand Prix. But now that he's got it solved, he'll be fast absolutely everywhere and on the soft tyres, and do not rule out a Joe fight back through the field, as we've seen countless times in his BUSR career.
But in his way is someone he's had a great rivalry with, and a great fight already during this race. The early parts between himself and Geek were absolutely fantastic watching, when we had a moment just to sort of switch back cameras from the other fights going on up front as Cameron. Yeah, I think, do you change where you go? It was a decent launch last time, as the safety car is announced to be coming in this lap. Does he want to change tack? Start going a little bit earlier? Maybe do the same as Ender Epic as you head down towards turn 17. Do you launch at the same time as before, or is he going to play around with the rest of the field? As Dasher, we remain right on the gearbox as we are end to end between all of the drivers. The safety car into the pit lane. It is time to make your choice. Where do you go, Cameron? as I think the pedal is down as away we go down towards the turn one. We haven't really had a difference between when they were on the safety car and now. Still about 4/10 as Matty trying to make a move around the outside, as Geek trying to stay with him on the inside. SK has retired from the session. That is one driver down after the restart, and it looks like it is another front wing replacement required for Ben, and Mad Dog just behind. A full caution, and it's another safety car for all the drivers out on track, which means we're going to be restricted down to maybe 1 or 2 laps of racing by the end of this this third safety car of the Las Vegas Grand Prix.
Yeah, safety car coming end of lap 23, so we'll have 24 and 25 to have it out for the Las Vegas Grand Prix and take the bragging rights of being the last winner of the Spring Series in 2025. Cameron's still got a pretty decent jump, it has to be said, on the drivers behind. He's going to have to do it once more, though, when the safety car comes in at the end of 23, but he's done this hundreds and hundreds of times, considering how fast and how rapid he is. He'll be used to leading, and he'll be used to closing out a victory that he's been in control of, it has to be said, ever since the very first safety car. He's managed it very, very nicely, and should be picking up the maximum haul of points, although don't discount the likes of Dasher. Last year, Newt's been very, very quick. Haven't seen too much of Josh Woolley in this second stint. Been very happy just to hold station in 4th place and retain formation behind the leading trio, but whether he'll be a little bit more punchy in these final couple of laps, you'd like to think so. Matty having it out with his old sparring partner Geek as well. Previously, they would have been battling for championships and race wins. Now it's only for 5th and 6th. How the time changes, and they've got Joe right behind them as well, 3 of the veterans of the BUSR series.
The last time that I saw Matty race was around Monaco, and I was told beforehand that he was a specialist around Monaco, so I called him the Monaco King. And guess who took that crown for him during that race? It was Joe. It's only 2 positions back, and that kept Joe alive in the championship pursuit last winter split. So a bit of a storyline developing between those 3 drivers from P5 to P7. In terms of the race storyline, though, Ender Epic will be looking to make up quite a few positions after not only leading the way underneath a safety car, but leading the way for a few laps. And now Last Gen Newt, his teammate, is reaping the rewards of just being relaxed and making one important overtake that got him into that position underneath the second safety car that we had. He got past Ender Epic, unfortunately, the last sort of gasp before everyone went in for their second stops underneath safety cars. And, he's ended up in P3. This is going to be an absolute... Well, it's going to be a war for these top few drivers. See who ends up winning the race. But Cameron, if he gets one good leap, he just could leave everyone in his dust. As we won't see if the safety car is coming in until about the yellow dot in the bottom right hand of your screen on the map. But most likely it is going to be time for everyone to go racing once again. The green flags will soon be flying from the marshals' points around the track. It'll be time to go racing again. There we go. Safety car in confirmed. When does Cameron go this time?
Big question. He could probably do what he did previously. And he has got an advantage as well, considering this is 2023, that the DRS will not get enabled on lap 25. So traditionally, you'd want to be in second place on the final lap going on to the strip straight, but realistically, you want to be leading the race to give yourself the best opportunity to try and bolt away from everybody else. And he is back in the pack up. Ender Epic-esque from earlier on in the Grand Prix and waiting, now bolting and trying to leave everybody in his way. 2 laps to go in the Spring Series of 25. 2 laps to go in the era of F1 23 in the BUSR. And already we're 3 wide down into turn number 1 for the final spot on the podium. And it's the McLaren of Last Gen Newt just about holding on. Matty coming out of absolutely nowhere to launch an attack, pushing Josh Woolley down into 4th. Make that 5th now because Matty and Last Gen Newt ghosting in between each other. Bit of a connection issue there. And now Josh Woolley trying to, pay them a hefty price for that and get back up onto the podium for the first time in quite a long while. Geek putting his nose in a place is not very welcome. Contact, of course, is with Joe. Wouldn't be at BUSR without Joe and Geek running into each other.
But somehow both survive. I think you can only presume. I always talk about floor damage, considering I don't know. It looks like that'll be a perfect chance for floor damage to happen. That is a very, very close contact with the wall. I think we've had a few small incidents going on, but one big one is going to be Jacan's right back at the back of the field in P14. I think having an instant mid-lap, but we still have these drivers having it out. I think Cameron has left everyone in his dust. He's up by about 1.6 seconds, and Last Gen Ute falling behind Woolly Blobs now. Josh getting through. Joe climbing up the field a little bit further. He's managed to get past both Geek and Matty and pretty much completely swapping positions with all drivers in front of him. And Zender Epic also making a move. On the inside is Joe next to Josh for a moment as Josh continues to fight with Last Gen New O position. Down into turn 17. Overtake made by Josh once more. Joe will follow through the leading AlphaTauri. Through into the pit straight. Down into turn 1. Can Joe make the move? Follows through Josh. And on the inside is at the moment in P4 and makes the move. Gets it done. Down into P4. Joe is through into P4 himself.
All-out warfare, battling incredibly hard for this final spot on the podium, and it's still not done in the battle for fourth place as Last Gen looking for any opportunity, the smallest possible margin, to slide that Papaya McLaren alongside and get back ahead of his Mercedes engine counterpart, Matty, waiting in the wings to try and pick up the pieces from any potential whoopsies that we see in this battle for the final spot on the podium. But Cameron Searle-esque has absolutely waltzed away on this restart. He's nearly 3 seconds clear of Dash, who in turn has put 2 seconds on the head tops of this chasing group behind, and this is going to be an almighty scrap down the strip straight for the very final time. Bit of a tongue twister, that one, isn't it? Through 12 we go for the final time on F1 23. Cameron Searle leading comfortably. Big scrap behind though. Josh Woolley has got 3.5 tenths in his back pocket ahead of the Aston Martin of Joe, who can come up trumps on the final lap of the season. Matty trying to pick up places late on in this race. The two McLarens struggling late on. Last Gen under significant pressure. Joe going for the move as well. He darts to the inside. Who's going to be bravest on the brakes? Surely it ends badly. It does. A little bit of wheel-to-wheel contact, but it's the AlphaTauri that comes through to hold on to third. The two McLarens picked off by the Haas of Matty, but round the final corner is a champion's drive. He's the king of not just these streets, but of the BUSR on F1 23. It's Cameron Searle, a champion's drive that takes the win, and it is poetic, isn't it? The dominant force in the BUSR winning the final race in this game. The Alfa Romeos are in absolute tatters over the line. Mad Dog 12th, Chaotic 13th. Dasher picking up second. Joe was trying all he might, dumping all the ERS. He was definitely down to 0% coming across the line, but couldn't quite steal the podium away from Josh Woolley. The McLarens faded, unfortunately, right at the end. Good recovery from Matty to finish in 5th. But we have to say, as we've said so many times over the past 2 years, your winner, of course it is Cameron Searle.
That man has dropped one race this entire season, possibly 2 if you include the sprint race in Baku. But in terms of main event races, only 1 dropped. And that's because he just wanted to give everyone else a chance. And he crashed out at turn 1. But this time, he survived everything thrown at him. He survived safety cars. He survived challenges from the McLarens. But he still remains on top. As we see 3 drivers who have deserved it today. They've had to come through so much adversity when it came down to this race. So much strategy involved as well with the safety cars. So many change of plans from each one of these drivers. But in the end, Cameron from Dasher, from Josh is our podium. But I think Joe, P4, should be enough to get him P2 in the Drivers' Championship. And I think in the end, it is going to be Josh who fills P3 in terms of the championship in the drivers. So, until we get confirmation, it is going to be Cameron, Joe, and Josh as our top 3 in the Drivers' Championship. But coming up with interviews is going to be Cameron, Dasher, and Josh after a fantastic, dramatic, and chaotic Las Vegas Grand Prix.
Yeah, and I think, Joe, we have to talk about the 3 main veterans, really. Less so Geek, he just got bogged down a little bit early on, but Matty, didn't have the pace at all, it has to be said. Caught up in a lot of incidents, especially early on, but to come through to finish 5th, picking up the places when it mattered right at death, did a really good job. And Joe needed a big performance to hold on to his championship position, produced it in some fashion as well. Missed out on 3rd by 600ths of a second, but 4th, like we think, should be enough. And considering what happened in the sprint, left him down in 12th place, needed a champion's drive, and he put in something very close to it.
Yeah, Joe's had a very rough season. The start wasn't really to his standards. He wasn't really fighting. He'd had a few bad moments. I mean, I remember Canada, the Wall of Champions managed to take him out, which possibly is a good sign for the future, considering what the Wall of Champions means. But unfortunately, that took his front wing. He dropped down the field. I'm pretty sure it ended up being almost his drop round in Canada. But for the rest of the weeks, we've seen him get close to the podium or be standing on it. He's had some fantastic drives in the latter half of this season, and really this one from about P12 up into P4, I think really caps it off. He's had a little bit of momentum going into Las Vegas. He might not get a podium, but I think with the drive he produced, I think the driver of the day from the game is actually quite deserved. He sort of was industrious in the background. He had a few ding-dong battles with Geek to try and get position. And in the end, P4, extremely well-deserved from him.
100%. And he needed it, didn't he? Was under significant pressure, was helped a little bit by, well, the disaster of Las Vegas for Mad Dog. Finished 12th in the main race. I can't remember where he finished in the sprint, but he wasn't particularly high either. So he definitely has leaked a couple of places. Dash with a good finish as well. Need to shout him out. 2nd place, was very controlled on that final restart. Yes, he lost 3 seconds to Cameron Searle, but managed to gap the group behind that were fighting tooth and nail for that final spot on the podium. And it was an easy couple of last laps to end off his season, and should pick up a couple of places, maybe jump ahead of Mad Dog in the standings. Not 100% sure on that one. But yeah, I traditionally, I don't like giving driver of the day to the winner. I think it's a little bit of a cop-out, so I would agree with you on that one. I'd probably give it to Joe.
Yeah, I think it's been way too easy to give it to Cameron this season. He's had just week after week, AO and I were sort of talking, and he would just put in a fantastic drive with everyone behind. He would just get the laps done, and he'll get away. He'll just leave everyone in his dust. He did the same with the last 2 laps here today. I think a lot of that was down to fighting behind. I think Dasher got slightly involved for one moment with the rest of the drivers trying to get position. And that was all that Cameron needed. Just one little spark of fighting between every driver behind for him to get away and have the gap. So honestly, I think this is arguably the worst performance we've seen from Cameron this season, and he still gets the win. I mean, other than Baku, where he found a wall, but it's around Baku, it's not hard to find a wall. But in terms of turn 1, he got through that, and for the rest of the race, I think he's found his rhythm and kept going. But he was bogged down. I think the huge DRS straight really equalized a lot of these drivers to be in the same sort of positions and be constantly trading. There was no chance to really escape unless there was fighting between the person behind, and so you could actually have the time delta to get away. Everything was equalized by the long straight. Everything was equalized by safety cars. It came down to strategy. It came down to good drives. Cameron delivered one, but yeah, I think Joe delivered an absolutely stupendous one to get up into P4. And the rest of the drivers, I think the McLaren drivers, if it wasn't for the safety car, I think we would see one of the papayas, and we'll probably be talking to one in just a moment. As it turns out, in terms of the podium, there's only 3 drivers we get to talk to. And first of all, we talk to P3 after everything. Josh, after putting in a fantastic drive, joins us now. Josh, hello. P3 after this season. Finally, you get a good performance around Las Vegas, not interrupted by many other drivers. Why don't you tell us about, the safety cars, the strategy today for yourself and the AlphaTauri?
Oh, that was chaos. Qualifying was surprising. We were all running 30.8s, or me and Cam were running 30.8s, 30.9s. And then for me to do a 31.7 on the first lap and see that I had a half a second advantage was a complete surprise. But yeah, sprint went well until I got shafted by that very, very late safety car where everyone overtook me and suddenly there was a safety car, which was unfortunate. But yeah, happy with the result. the final safety car definitely threw some intrigue into the race. I think we were 4 wide at one point, which is always fun. But yeah, positive result for myself.
It felt massively like everything came, and you sort of said it there, everything came at exactly the wrong time for you because the pace looked very, very strong. Obviously, you spoke about qualifying on the money pretty early on compared to everybody else. And then the race, is that how you see it? Because it looked like, through no fault of your own, really, you were just in the wrong place at the wrong time every time a safety car came out or every time there was a little bit of DRS training going on.
Yeah. Well, qualifying went wrong on my second run where I tried to emulate Cam in turn 3, but ended up in the other wall, facing backwards, which was fun. But yeah, anytime there was a DRS train or a safety car, it seemed to come out right as I'd just been overtaken. And actually on that final safety car under the pits, I, for whatever reason, got held in my pit box for about 2 seconds, which let Newt through, which ultimately ended my battle for the win.
I mean, talking in battles, you had an absolutely massive one with Joe at 2 points of that track. Tell me about the battle with Joe. I mean, he was storming up the field from P12 up towards P4 where he ended up. You had to keep him behind, and through especially that sort of tight section from turns about 14 up to 16, you were pretty much side by side through the entire time. So tell us about some of the battles that you had throughout that race.
Yeah, those battles were mad. We were at the front. We were sort of working together as DRS train just let us drive off. So that was a little bit more coordinated. But that last battle was horrible because I came out the final corner and my wheel decided to give me no more force feedback. And so I was praying that I didn't accidentally put it in a wall out of that final corner. But I think I kept Joe behind by 600ths or something in the end. So good result. Nice to end the season on a high after missing a few races.
How would you summarise the season as a whole? Positive on the most part?
Yeah, great start. What could have been with a spinning COTA and then torrential rain on my favourite track where I, cannot drive in the rain. And then missing 2 rounds to still finish only 20 points off second or so is, I'd say, what could have been, but ultimately positive compared to previous seasons.
Well, congratulations, Josh. I believe that is going to be P3 in the drivers' standings. Not quite confirmed yet, but I think the maths checks out as it is. But P3 today as well. Congratulations.
Cheers, guys.
Well, next up, we do have the Scuderia joining us on the podium with Dasher. Dasher, we didn't quite get to talk last week. You ended up P2 after a few penalties came out, but a good race in the end around Las Vegas. I think I asked Josh exactly the same question, but tell me about the safety cars, because it was absolutely ridiculous to get 3 and so close together as well.
To be honest, it felt a bit uneventful on my end, to be honest, because I just kind of ended up being in the same place every time. Cameron ahead of me, maybe some other bloke was also there. I followed them through the safety car, ended up behind Cameron, and just kind of did that every safety car, and ended up that I ended P2. So not too much on my end, to be honest, just pitting a lot.
How did the pace feel in general? Looked at certain points where you're managing it a little bit more, sort of hovering around that 1 second to the car in front, but then, especially at the end of the race, that final stint on the mediums, you look pretty confident, and then as well on the softs, when the safety car came in, managed to gap everybody else behind.
So yeah, my hard pace did not feel great whatsoever. That was horrendous. So while it looked like I was managing, I was just that far behind. I could barely keep the DRS, but I kept it. Mediums I felt very confident on. More than happy to just kind of stick with Cameron, especially with like the biggest DRS zone there's ever been. And that softs, to be honest, Cameron left, so I wasn't fighting him. And all the blokes behind me started fighting before I got involved, so I managed to pull away due to them fighting more than my pace. But I felt confident today, and I think it showed. Double P2, I think, is quite good.
Yeah, you sort of dropped in and out of races this season, so it feels like, in a way, you haven't quite had the momentum. So getting 2 P2s to the end of the season has been fantastic for you. But I'm going to steal Tom's question that he asked Josh as well. How would you describe the season? Because you have been in and out, race here and there, but still you've ended up at the business end of the championship standings.
The last 3 races, so technically the last 4 races I've done, I finished P2 in all of them. To be honest, I felt like a bit of a frauded. I frauded that a bit. No, it's been a good season overall, especially up at the top, where I've kind of mostly just sat, just kind of watching. It's been really clean. I've really enjoyed the racing. And yeah, it hasn't been dirty for the most part. Lots of broken wings all up and down the field. So I've enjoyed it. If I'd done a couple more races and Austria didn't rain, because I'm the worst wet driver to ever exist, could have been a better season. Could have been on the podium in the championship standings. But P4, I'll take it. Good season overall.
And what does the future potentially look like? Maybe moving on to a new game. Do you think that's the catalyst for everybody to try and peg Cameron Sale back a little bit?
What am I in? Like my 10th season of BUSR or something ridiculous now. I don't know. Maybe it's time to hang up the sticks for old Dasher. Plenty of P3s in the championship, 2 championship wins. I think it might be time to call it a day. I'll be playing the F1 25 game. And I'll be around BUSR, but I don't know if I'll be racing again. We'll have to wait and see.
Possibly end of the story here. Dasher, thank you very much for joining us. P2, congratulations.
Thank you for having me, guys.
Well, I've seen him in NSE Rocket League for a while, so it's crazy to sort of meet up with Dasher as well, especially with Matty around. All of us have been around NSE Rocket League. And now we're sort of chilling in BUSR F1. But tell you what, someone who's been ruling the roost for a while in BUSR is Cameron, and he joins us now with a 7th race victory in a row. Cameron, are you disappointed not to have won the first race of the season, to have a bit of a longer streak as well? Or?
Yeah, I mean, it would have been fun to clean sweep it, but I'll take the 7 out of 7 counted. So,
got to give a bit of charity.
Yeah, and that one did make some great racing as well. I enjoyed watching it.
Is that a bless you, Alistair?
No, I was just sort of saying a lot of the action today probably happened in the mirrors to the left and right of him. So most likely he was just watching the action going, what the heck is going on over there? What? What's going on over there? But, it seemed like that today. But of course, Las Vegas seemed to neutralize the race a lot. Tell me about the racing and strategy today, considering you didn't spend a lot of that race in P1. You were sort of struggling and sort of in a vortex between P1 and about P4.
Yeah, I mean, certainly with the DRS, we couldn't brake at all. There was no braking. I think it was the sprint where it was like a 9-10 car train. That was genuinely the pace. As the tyres went, we had a bit more. And I think without DRS, we could, as you saw at the end. But yeah, no, that was genuinely pace. It was great fun.
I mean, look, the positions were flip-flopping quite a lot, but especially in the main races, it looked like wherever you found yourself, whether that was first, second, third, I can't remember you dropping down to 4th or 5th that often, but you always looked like you're in complete control, knew what you were doing, didn't take your eye off the ball, and backed yourself to eventually come through and clean up.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, a couple of sketchy sort of overtakes, I think, particularly into the final chicane, just people getting a lot slower, and then suddenly everyone backs up. That was a little bit of a worry for the front wing, but other than that, it was just keeping it clean. I think that was the aim for most people. Some successfully, some not, by the sound of it.
Yeah, plenty of instance up and down the field. And I think for one of the few times this season, you did not lead a safety car restart. Talk about the sort of, I mean, Ender Epic led the way incredibly well on the launch. You had 2 good restarts as well. But safety cars brought chaos on. What was it like sort of actually finally seeing someone else lead a safety car restart?
Oh, it's great fun, especially when it is the new guys. Yeah, that takes a little bit of getting used to sort of where they're going to go. Oren caught all of us napping, to be honest.
Yeah, I picked that out as well. It was about
he bolted.
Yeah.
and I was watching the mirrors for Dasher there as well. Obviously, we had the tyre advantage at that point, so we did come back past. But yeah, no, both McLarens, I think until the last little bit, were having really good races.
And what are we thinking about the potential prospects of trying to maintain this advantage on a brand new game? Do you think you're still going to be able to, maybe get the clean sweep for the first time?
I mean, if it's anything like 24, this will probably be my last race. I did not enjoy that game. I think we'll have to see. If it gets better, I'll be back. Otherwise, yeah, this will be my last one. I'll get to watch for a bit.
Going out on top, I don't think anyone else could ask anything more. Going out like Nico Rosberg, except with multiple titles to your name. Cameron, thank you very much for joining. That was meant to be a dig at Nico Rosberg, but it ends up being so. Thank you very much for joining us, Cameron. Once again, top of the podium and champion of BUSR.
Thank you very much, guys.
Well, there you have it. The Las Vegas weekend is done and dusted. Sprint race and feature race won by Cameron Searle. And, well, when you're going to gamble, put it on the blue, put it on the Red Bull, as Cameron delivered another victory for the season.
Banker. He's the trump card, isn't he? You can always rely on Cameron Searle 99% of the time. We can't give him the full 100%, but most of the time we will put in a performance that is of a very high and consistent standard. And once again, doing that today, once he got out into the lead about 50% of the way through, did not look back, wasn't really under any pressure, and didn't at all look like he was going to give it up.
Absolutely not. But if this is the last race, as I said, going out on top is fantastic. But in terms of BUSR, that is not the end of the road in terms of driving opportunities. Later on this year, we're going to be running an F1 24 Joker series. It's not going to be streamed, but it's going to be in the F2 cars on the F1 24 game before, hopefully, we transition over to F1 25 in the summer as a possibility. But if you want to get involved, there is a BUSR Grid Finder as well now. So make sure you go ahead and get on Grid Finder and join the BUSR through that.
100%. Get involved. Lots of fun. Communities very, very welcoming. And get yourself, maybe try and, if you think you can challenge some of the more established names, then get your name on that sign-up sheet and get yourself in the Discord, of course.
But that is it. BUSR Spring 2025 is rounded up with one last Grand Prix today. It's been a fantastic season. It's been a runaway season for Cameron. And we'll see you all next time.
and no moment in history where I could stand and say, arithmetic begins here, now. Road.